So in this video, I want to talk to you about whether money actually defines a man's success. On my channel, I cover building your career, building your finances, and I help you primarily through developing a strong career from working at Goldman, Morgan Stanley, many other top banks for over a decade. Link in the description if you want help with your career, whether it's getting promoted or landing your dream career, dealing with office politics. These are the type of things I cover. Link in description. But what I want to talk about now is, to what extent does money define a man's success? A lot of the times, if you're on this part of the internet, typically hear me and other people talk about, yes, money's important, but also you want freedom, you want to focus on your purpose, so you have a real fulfilling life as a man, right? And here we're going to talk about how, to what extent money defines a man's level of success and fulfillment, and how people judge him. We're going to listen to this podcast from Diary of CEO. It has 10 million subscribers, and it's an interesting discussion between this normie, some kind of feminist therapist, relationship coach, and this baby boomer guy with a bald head.
Role does feminism and the rise of feminism play in all of this? Because I've had people on my podcast. I think actually our last episode we published was a lady who's a child psychologist. She's been that way for three decades. And she came on and said that the feminist movement has let men and women down in some ways. There's been great upsides, but there's also been a cost. And one of the things she was really big on, which I thought would be extremely controversial, it turns out it wasn't in the comment section, is that she believes women should be there for the first 2 years of a child's life. And I questioned her and I was like, and then I looked at the stats and I looked at the research, and she basically makes the case that because the mother is producing certain hormones, so I searched and it was true, we fact checked that episode, and then beyond there, the man, the father, brings out another set of hormones in the young child, which are about play and adventure and all these kinds of things. So she makes the case that we've got women and we've told them that they can have it all. They can have an incredible career. They can also be incredible mothers. And she says that in her office, she often sees mothers coming in saying that they're 39 years old, they're struggling, they're trying to do IVF, they feel like they were lied to, throwing all of that out there.
I'm going to quote Scott to Scott, which is, you can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yeah, you can talk about what is the best hormone balance and brings out the best in kids. And then there's the real world. And my partner was working at Goldman Sachs with 2 babies and getting up at 5 a.m, and it was hell for her. And at the same time, I was struggling with trying to get economic traction because my whole identity as a man, I'm not proud of this, has been defined by money.
So is mine. I don't think men say this enough. Like, I thought this was really weird because I'm in Austin right now. And my team put me up in a hotel, and it's just like a normal hotel. I don't give a fuck. My girlfriend comes to town tonight. Immediately my brain goes, oh my God, we need to move into a better hotel Airbnb because my girlfriend, I've been with her for 7 years. She doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
She doesn't care about material things. She doesn't have a Louis Vuitton anything. She's a breathwork, she's a yogi, right? But there's still this part of me, even at this stage where I'm like, she's not going anywhere, where I constantly think about, I need to be successful, I need to have money, I need to demonstrate strength, or she won't like me. It's so weird because it's not true. Like, I know it's not true, but it's in me.
I don't know. I think it's mostly true. I think in a capitalist society, the healthcare of your children, the opportunities your children have, your ability to provide, your ability to take care of your parents, unfortunately in our society, is so tightly correlated to money that I think at the end of the day, masculinity kind of comes down to provider, protector, and procreator. And I think every young man should at least start with the notion they're going to be the economic provider. And by the way, that might mean getting out of the way and being more supportive of your partner who happens to be better at the whole money thing than you. That's part of masculinity too. Right. But a good place to start is to assume in a capitalist society that you have a responsibility to be economically viable. And every piece of incentive in our society, I remember in the 70s when I was in grade school, our principal was a cool guy. He wore cool jackets and he had great hair and he smelled aqua velva and he drove a 240Z. You could be a high character, handsome, interesting, cool guy into karate or whatever. Now I just think it's all about the Benjamins. It is so much, our society, democracy, your rights, your sexual attractiveness as a man. I don't care what, give me an article about how men just need to be emotionally available. Bullshit. It's so disappointingly about money in my view. All the incentives telling young men, and so they go to these get rich quick schemes. If they can't make money, they feel like losers. But what you're feeling, quite frankly, is common sense from every signal that if for some reason it doesn't work out with your mate, your selection set of mates, how interesting you are to other men, your opportunities, your rights, your democracy is going to be based on your ability to be economically powerful. It's not the way the world should be, but it is the way the world is. And what I say to young men is, there's just no getting around it. You have to be economically viable.
So a couple of points to focus on here, right? Now, firstly, this guy's the bald-headed boomer. He's talking about how Scott Galloway, I think is his name. He's talking about how his wife was working at Goldman Sachs. She was like a partner at Goldman Sachs or something while she was pregnant. The question is, right, why is she working like a very stressful job if she's pregnant, if her focus is her kids? And he's saying, oh, it's complete hell for her, very difficult for her. Well, I'm sure she could have at this point, if she's more senior partner level, level, managing director level. She could basically go on maternity leave, put her career to one side to focus on having kids, right? Which should be the priority. And I assume she was having these kids quite late in life, late 30s, early 40s, which is not the best time to be having kids, given the system is pushing women not to have kids during the biological appropriate age, which would be in her, like, right, broadly speaking. Now, if you want to focus on your career and then whinge about the fact that, oh, you can't have kids, but you can have kids, because in certain cases like this, I'm sure she has enough money to put her career to one side while she has kids and maybe spends 2 years outside of the workforce and her husband's working too, right? Then you've got other instances where the host of this podcast is said his girlfriend is a yogi, right? She's a breath worker, which means she focuses on doing yoga basically, right? And it's not really a stressful job, and this shows the double standard here, right? That a man's success is at least partly defined about how much money he makes, because I'm sure she's not making a lot of money if she teaches yoga. Some of those people do, big personal brands online, but many of them don't. He's probably paying for everything, paying for the hotel, paying for the food, the travel, everything. And she lives a very comfortable life, but I'm sure even him, and we're going to cover this in future videos, I'm going to be covering on this particular funny piece of life advice podcast that they have here, where he's talking about how he has to listen to his girlfriend vent. He enjoys listening to her emotions and things like that, even though he's doing stressful work, and giving public speeches, traveling, and to do like a lot of the work he does, which is really be a public figure. I'm sure it's not the most stressful job, but it's like he has to overextend himself to give his girlfriend time to vent her emotions and give her this preferential treatment. Now, if he's going to put them in an expensive hotel, like, role is she actually playing? This is the thing that comes up time and time again. If you're in a relationship with a woman these days and she's a career woman, what role is she playing in your life? Because her focus is her career, really, right? And then after that will come you or the kids. And typically, if she has to choose between prioritizing the best interest of her boss or her boyfriend or husband, she's going to pick prioritizing the best interest of her boss and her career and her selfish interest over her boyfriend or husband. In many cases, a man would focus on his career to benefit his family, because he'll be making more money to give his family a better life. And women don't see it that way. It's about their personal success that they're focused on. The phrase is solopscystic, if you're familiar with that word, solopscystic, right? Now, and to go into this in a bit of detail, like, this guy's going to pay for the expensive hotel. Again, what is his girlfriend doing for him? Is she going to be the one who's cooking and cleaning the meal, cooking and cleaning for him when they're living, when they're not traveling, when they're at home? Probably not, right? He's a multimillionaire based on what they say. He's probably paying for meal prep service, or paying for a cook in some sense, or maybe a house cleaner who also does some meal prep, things like that. And his girlfriend's probably focusing on her job and hanging out with her friends. I doubt she's doing much to justify some kind of equality in the relationship, right? So I would say money and social status, to a certain extent, even to this day, even though we have so-called equality, still does define a man. The gender roles still apply to men. They don't really apply to women in this society. And there's still there's an expectation that you will be the protector and provider as a man. Now, my perspective on that is that you should focus as a man on getting rich for yourself, right? You shouldn't focus on getting rich to benefit society or benefit wife or girlfriend to impress her. You should focus on getting rich to maximize your freedom, your options, your leverage, your living locations. As CGA coach Greg Adams says, focus on maximizing your peace, quiet, and freedom. I say focus on your health, wealth, and freedom. So similar concepts, right? Now, what's interesting here is even the millionaire guy who's the podcast host, who we saw talking about in the hotel, he's still trapped by this never-ending need to please and placate women who seem to be never happy with whatever he does, right? In this case, he mentioned his girlfriend doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to her which hotel they're in. But I think in many cases, if he's thinking about in that instance, it probably applies in many other instances. How can I make sure my wife's happy? How can I make sure she's protected and provided for? And she's not really thinking the same about you, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure out social dynamics in these situations. And this is the point I'm making to you guys, right? There's no point, and that's why I got the caption on the screen right now: money plus freedom equals alpha male. Now, the term alpha male has become a bit ridiculous, but the point remains that there's no point having money and still pandering to women. There's no point having money and still pandering to, whatever a woman wants. And you see it sometimes with these passport bro guys. These passport bros, they travel to other countries and take their money, and they basically throw around their money to get the attention of women. And they're still basically overextending themselves to pander to the female approval and validation. And that's no way to live. You have to find internal fulfillment in this society and do what benefits you individually as a man. And a woman is a side piece to that. She's a side character in your life, and you're the main character character. And that's really how many women see their life, right? They're the girl boss, they're the girl power, they're the main character, they're living their best life, and the man is a side character that facilitates that. Maybe he's paying for the apartment rent, maybe he's taking her out to nice places so she can take photos and put that on Instagram and make other women jealous that she's living a good quality, better quality life than them. He's like a side character in a life, and that's how you should really see a relationship you're in. I know it's controversial, some people won't like it, but it is what it is. The point is, these millionaire guys are still going through the same kind of, oh, I need to make sure my girlfriend's emotions are fully catered to. It's just a bit ridiculous after a point. That's why, I don't even build my life in a selfish way. It's more in a self-sufficient way. So I'll say that again, it's not about being selfish, it's about being self-sufficient. And what do I mean by that? It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to create a situation where my business is dependent on potential fault lines of a business partner that could a change of heart and it crashes my business and my income stream. I'm not going to be in a relationship with a woman where she can claim the property I live in, and then if it doesn't work out or we get divorced or there's a breakup, she can basically kick me out the house, right? Because of common law partnership or whatever, or cohabitating with a woman, being married, things like that, where it can impact your property status and whether the woman has a right to your property even if she doesn't own it, right? I won't put myself in a position where my entire social life is dependent on that relationship. So, because people walk in and out your life now, most relationships are very transactional, not only between men and women, but even the companies you work for. I'm not so attached to one company I'm working for, like work to Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. I'm like, oh, I'm so attached to that company. If I'm fired, I don't know what I'd do. I'd lose my sense of identity. No, I can just go back in the industry, find another job from another good company, right? That's how you should really see your life. And this is very important for you to do. The thing is, the West, which is currently collapsing, in generally speaking, the West, men, civilization, creativity, freedom of movement, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, it can only flourish when you stop caring so much about what placates or pleases women or boomers or other demographics in society, what they think, what their judgment is, or valuing their criteria or their hierarchy. For example, many men are focused on their height because women are judging men on their height. Men personally, we don't really value each other that much on height. Maybe we might notice someone who's particularly tall or particularly short, but we value each other's on the content of their character, to quote Martin Luther King, right? To value each other on their actual achievements, right? Women care about height, but all of a sudden you can tell society is so feminized because now everything's become about superficial elements for men. Men are so conscious of the way they look, on how tall they are. And I understand you can say that's part of life, that's part of how people judge each other. But it is such an extreme that you can see how ridiculous it is. Even in this dynamic of this video, you'll see how much they're pandering to keep her happy, even though there's meant to be a discussion about men in society. Now, I've worked in major investment banks, which I mentioned earlier, and without naming the particular bank, I remember working at one American investment bank where I had 4 different men who were quite financially successful. They were all in a low multimillionaire range, I would say between $1 and $3 million, for example, just based on their seniority, how long they've been working at the company, in the sales roles, in the trading roles. And they all have some kind of woman issue, right? We had one guy who was a very successful salesperson. He was a little bit out of shape, but he had quite like an attractive wife, like a wife who was a former model, and they had some kids together. She was whinging about him and complaining about him, and he was sometimes venting about it in the office, and he was buying her expensive handbags and things like that. Another guy who was married, and his marriage was much more successful, and they had a nice house in the countryside away from and they would spend a lot of time there with his wife and kids, and everything was going well. But sometimes his wife would be complaining about the cost of they need to spend more money on private tuition for their kids or a better quality school. And then you got other guys who were dealing with divorce, dealing with alimony payments, and very dysfunctional engagements with their girlfriends after their marriage. And then also you got other dynamics where things were going quite well, right? I remember one guy I was working with who was a successful trader, and his wife was a stay-at-home wife, and she would do a lot of cooking and meal prep for him, and it really helped him stay healthy when he's working long work hours. So there's all sorts of different dynamics here, right? And the point is, even multimillionaires are having a lot of these dysfunctional dynamics. You see it with billionaires too, who get caught up in very expensive divorces. Now, the point is, what's the real advice we can take here? Because these boomers, these normies, these feminists haven't not got the real talking points we're looking for, right? The trend you see, and I'm going to cover this in other videos, there's a term called financial celibacy, where men on social media like TikTok, they're responding to women who are saying, oh, they're not going to sleep with a man unless he's spending money on her, taking her out to expensive places. And men kind of with, oh, we're financially celibate, which means that we're not going to spend money on women anymore, basically. Now, you see many, I've worked with many women who would be in long-term relationships, in marriages, and what they maintain is a go bag. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before. It went viral on Reddit and social media before, where women will maintain their secret savings account separate from their husband. So if the relationship doesn't go well or they need to break up, she's saving money, a lot of money on the side to kind of divorce him and maintain their own financial stability separately and secretly from him. This is quite a common phenomenon, right? You see this even though men are overextending themselves to spend more money on their girlfriend or their wife. And women tend to be getting richer anyway from their careers, from divorce payments. We've seen alimony, many men still paying the rent of their wife after a divorce. You see bias at work favoring women. And in addition to that, like I got a specific example. I remember working with a female managing director who had a fast track from an intern, very junior, to managing director. She became the youngest managing director in the whole bank in her like mid-30s, like around 33, 34, she became a managing director, which is quite young for that particular type of role. And, you know, quite well known. She was very good friends with some senior male management. And also there was a general push within the department to promote more women to senior roles. So she benefited from all of that. She would often whinge about her husband, asking her to change her last name to his last name, given they'd been married for several years. All these type of things, and she was getting all this special treatment at work, completely acted like she wasn't and pretending like she wasn't and whinging about work. And then you have all these other middle-aged men who are trying to maintain their career, so they would suck up to her to keep their position in the company stable, who were just below her in management levels, even though they were more experienced than her. And after she spent basically her 20s and 30s getting special treatment, high salary, as you can imagine, as a managing director in London at a major American investment bank, after that, when she hit her early 40s, she decided to have kids, right, through IVF and things like that. And it's kind of funny to see that she was on maternity leave. I didn't ask too many details, but it was like from this completely biased system in the corporate world, then benefit from the entire science and medical framework to benefit women who are being focused on their careers so they can have kids later in life. So it's the complete infrastructure to give women favorable treatment throughout their 20s and 30s, socially, economically, in the corporate world, then to have kids later in life, which obviously is risky, and there's risk also to the kid. And there may be some links between having kids later in life and having kids who have health complications, being on the autism spectrum, things like that. Not saying autism's bad, autism is a superpower, but the point is, these women get so much catered to them, they just don't realize it, right? And men are kind of trenches trying to figure it out, like from behind drastically, by a deliberately rigged system.
Went through financial hardship, and he's in the lead up to starting a family, etc. And he went through a moment where he was going to be declared bankrupt, and he was inconsolably depressed. His partner was fine; she was kind of like, "You get through this," but it was like he actually said to me, he goes, "I've never felt more worthless." And that's something that I've heard echoed by many men who go through sort of economic, financial roller coasters. And
that was actually one of the stats in that report, the Lost Boys report. Richard Reeves talks about this. I think that's actually where it comes from. So Richard Reeves says that the number one cause of death for young men under 15 is suicide, and that men in general, the things that they describe in their notes when they commit suicide are these words: worthless and useless. And so if men feel like their identity and their value and their worth comes from money, when they don't have money or they can't be a provider and they're sort of on the edge of society, then they're literally opting out, sometimes with their lives.
So that's just a short story there, right, about the host of the podcast talking about his friend who's gone through bankruptcy. See, there still is an expectation for men to be providers, but the question is, what is woman expected to do? And it's literally nothing, right? There's no expectation for a woman to do anything. Anything she's doing is like favor she's doing a man. She's dragging her feet, like it's a unrealistic, unreasonable expectation, right? A man's self-worth typically these days still linked to finances. For me, it's time I focused on finances, whether it's through my business, through my career, things like that. It's because finances facilitate freedom, which is another acronym I have on the channel, triple F. Finances facilitate freedom, which means I'm focused on making money because it gives me more freedom to spend my life however I want. That's why I focus on it. Otherwise, personally, I'm not a very materialistic person. I'm not going to buy things for the sake of it. Many men are opting out on the fringes of society. They're opting for minimalism, more time and less money, right? Which means that you want to spend more time in nature, playing video games, whatever they want to do, rather than focus on their career. And just to evidence this reality that there is still a bias where men are kind of on their career, there's 4 studies I just want to briefly mention here. This study says that men and blue-collar workers experience more psychological distress from unemployment than women and white-collar workers. Men's personal identity is more linked to their job and their income status compared to women, and that's typically why they are a bit more stressed out about financial situation. This also covered here. Job loss leads to major depression in both genders, but it's much more noticeable within men. This study is showing that the societal norms and gender expectations cause men to suffer more emotionally compared to women when it comes to unemployment. And the other statistic here is around how there's more depressive symptoms affecting job prospects for both men and women, but men don't bounce back emotionally from employment issues. And then lastly, we have this: men, especially manual laborers, not receiving unemployment benefit, have much worse mental health outcomes than women. Now, if you're dealing with these type of scenarios, this is what I can help. There's a link in description. If you click on that, you will be led to this page, and I'll help you deal with a promotion and how to accelerate your promotion path, how to land yourself in a dream career, to make more money in your job, and how to master office politics. These are the ways I can actually help you out. Now, this is what I want to focus on, in the sense that it really does put a lot of pressure on men in terms of making more money, and it tries to pretend like it's not. It tries to pretend like you have gender equality. When women make money, it's not really typically to spend on their husband and things like that, but when a man's making money, it's really to spend on their family, right? Women are not really making tons of money just to spend on their family, from what I've seen, right, in many cases in the corporate environment. Now let's listen to this completely ridiculous scenario. And bear in mind, this guy's based on what they say. You tend to exaggerate, lots of fake characters on the internet. But based on what we know from this guy, multi-millionaire from his his late teens, early 20s apparently. And he goes and working hard in his job, giving public speeches. I think he's over abroad in Sweden or Switzerland. And after giving this long speech, his wife says, his girlfriend says, we need to talk, and have a long Zoom call where she's venting for 90 minutes about her emotions and stuff. This is absolute cringe. This is the type of ridiculous advice you're given by men in mainstream society. So let's listen to just terrible advice. If I was in that position, I'd just tell her the relationship's over. I'll find another one to replace you.
We have a certain way typically, but learning the skill of hearing and understanding your partner, and which is very difficult. And this might just be me. I find it incredibly difficult to sit and to listen to my partner for 90 minutes when she tells me indirectly all the things I did wrong. I've had to learn the skill of doing that. And I sat here with someone who's a psychologist, and said to me, if you're a man, you have to learn the skill of sitting down for 90 minutes a week and letting your partner tell you everything that they're feeling and going through. With my boys, we don't do that.
Yeah.
When we go on holiday, it is total silence. We're eating fucking Pringles and watching the game. But when I'm with my partner, and I'm sure when she's with her friends, it's talking. So I've developed the skill now, just like sitting and listening. And then sometimes I take notes. And then sometimes I repeat back to her what she just said to me. And this is totally alien to me. And it hurts when I do it. I find it so uncomfortable. I find it really uncomfortable to do that.
Even though this is something you spend hours a
Yeah,
week doing for your
100%.
job,
It's so unnatural to me.
but you've worked on it.
I've worked on it, yeah. I did it like days ago. My girlfriend said, I was traveling around the world.
Yeah.
We were in, I don't even know what country we were in. She goes, I've got some things I want to talk about. Can we put some time in the calendar?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have 60 minutes? I've got off stage in Sweden. I put in 60 minutes into my calendar. She video calls me and she talks to me for about 45 minutes. I don't have anything to say. I'm so tired. And I just sit there and listen. And in between the lines, it's like things I could do better. She's not blaming me or anything, but it's hard for me. My boys would never do that. Our friendship isn't contingent on those things. So that's what I would say.
I love that.
I don't know if you relate to that, but
I think about this a lot with my boys, and I think 3 legs of the stool are provider. I'm probably over focused on the economics. That doesn't necessarily mean making a lot of money, but at least being disciplined and responsible about it, developing skills, certification, having a plan, right? Don't be the guy ordering a bottle of Grey Goose at 2 a.m. Like, I'm going home because I got to get up. I have a plan, and I have a vision for how I'm going to be a good provider. Protector, good manners. Your default system is protection. You constantly speak well of people behind their backs.
Mm.
You hear someone being critical of someone else, your inclination is to defend them. You don't demonize special interest groups. Your default setting, if somebody needs help anywhere or is being threatened, It's so heartbreaking to me that women feel unsafe when they see a group of men coming down the street. Surveys show women are inclined to cross the street. And it just feels like from an early age, men need to be taught anyone smaller, anyone more vulnerable than you in a special interest group, your default is protection. That's what men do. Think about masculinity, a soldier, a cop, a fireman. What do they do? At the end of the day, they protect. That is your default operating system as a move to protection.
So again, if you're a multimillionaire coming off a stage from giving like live public speech to hundreds of people, let's just assume, and then you have to listen to your girlfriend berate you for 90 minutes. You know, I don't know what to say. Like, how can you not say that out loud in a public place, like a podcast, and be like, well, maybe I need to end the relationship then if she's just wasting my time, right? Every week I have to listen to her vent against me for 90 minutes. It's completely ridiculous. And again, therapists aren't the answer. I don't know why you'd spend all this time listening to therapists. And when I listen to these type of people, it reminds me of Nietzsche when he talks about the last man. You're probably familiar with the term soy boy or bug man, things like that, where it's just like, how can you not like what the dynamics are and like up from this? And instead everything you hear here is like advice. It's almost like brainwashing to the viewer, to the normies, to be like, oh well, maybe I do need to spend 90 minutes each week listening to my wife or girlfriend be critical about the relationship or about me. It's just completely ridiculous, right? And there's many points I want to raise here. One point is around the benefits of living alone. Like, if you're in a relationship, you should think about, if you're living with a woman, do you want to spend each evening or multiple times listening to your partner, listening to a vent about her job, about you? How much time is wasted in a relationship versus living alone or being single and making money and being in a relationship when it's convenient for you, or being in a casual relationship with a woman where she's not emotionally venting to you? It's the type of things to focus on in your free time, your side hustle, not necessarily listening to a woman vent. Now, my estimate is that living costs are going to continue to go up, right, dramatically over the next 5 years. You know, establishment, the economic forums of the world and things like that, they really want to make people slaves in one sense or form by 2030. That's their goal. And you can see this agenda on the right wing and the left wing. I don't want to get into politics right now, but when I hear about things in the US like Real ID and things like that, CBDCs, all these type of things, this system doesn't... Have you noticed that you're not one particular instance ever where there's a projection into the future and it's a utopia? Every time they have a movie about the future, it's a dystopia. Have you noticed that? All the movies, Hollywood, things like that, all of these are based on secret societies and their agendas, 3-letter agencies, service, things like that. You won't name all the different agendas, you know. They don't really want people having kids. They don't want you to have high standards of living. They want you to have no kids, low standards of living, have some form of like socialist commune, and you're tracked by the government, surveillance, tracking all your purchases in your home, cameras in your home, things like that. They don't have a positive outlook for the future. And I think if you want to focus on your freedom, which many people do if you watch my channel, you should think about getting off the grid however you can. And obviously you're going to have to depend on the system for some things, buying food, working your job. But if you have different ways of being self-sufficient, less dependent on the system, that's how you're going to win, right? It could be simple things like meal prep right now until you make more money and maybe buy your own property or your own land, things like that. But these things take time. Those are just some general points. Now, the question is, he's talking about how men have to have a plan. And I've given you many ideas throughout my channel on how to have a plan. The question is, do women have a plan? If we have gender equality and men are expected to have a plan to be a provider, do women have a plan to be a provider and pay for their boyfriend or their husband's this or that? No, they don't really have a plan. They expect there to be a safety net, someone to catch them through their carelessness. It could be a boyfriend, husband, father, the government, funded by mostly male taxpayers and things like that. Someone has to catch them, right? He wants men to play and participate in this brokered social contract, this failed social contract, which are covered in other videos. These people are dweebs, right? Imagine being a man looking out for a woman's best interest in 2025 in this failed society, this collapsed society. Is just completely ridiculous to me. Now, I want to talk about a natural instinct, right? That men have a natural instinct to tune out women. Now, I'm not saying you should never listen to women. I think women can have good insight in terms of analyzing other people and analyzing yourself. So sometimes women do have some good insights, but I think there's something to be said about natural instincts. If all men naturally tune out women, why is that? Because a lot of time women are venting about their emotions. So you to a woman for that much time, you have to read in between the lines, figure out what's valuable and what you want to focus on versus what is just drivel and verbal diarrhea and verbal vomit, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that men are very selective to what extent they're listening to women, right? This show is like a form of brainwashing for men, telling you got to listen to women for 90 minutes after getting off stage, doing a public speech when you're quite busy. And this is what I mean. This they're trying to normalize here is completely unproductive, unnatural behavior from men. Again, encouraging men to be more feminized and emotional, which they're not, right? So what we're expecting here, men to be a provider, to be a protector for society that's failed them. There's no tribal community. What are you getting in return? You don't even get baseline respect, which is free, right? Women often disrespect men in the workplace, in the home, things like that. So, and I disagree with him. He says, oh, you got to respect special interest groups. What special interest groups are we talking about? Are we talking about the rainbow community? They don't respect straight men. Are we talking about feminists? They don't respect straight men. So what we got to look out for the interest of the conflict in Eastern Europe. I don't care about them. They don't care about me. You know, billions of dollars of my taxpayer money in the UK is going to help that country. They don't care about me. They're not giving me money. You know, these people are multimillionaires living a comfortable life. They set up themselves in tax efficient scenarios. Probably everyone you see in this debate, right, in this discussion. And they're giving you lectures. Oh, you got to participate in this broken society. It's completely ridiculous. Now, I think you should think carefully about to what extent you engage in this society, particularly when it's been so disrespectful to you. So let's continue to listen to their deranged advice for you.
On from all the pornography, from all the technology, that you literally have to teach your sons the importance of procreation. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm really freaked out by all of this stuff, because we are at a point in society where in South Korea, of 100 people of childbearing age, they are going to produce 12 grandchildren based on a 0.7 birth rate. And the fact that you talk about the P of procreation, like, I'm so worried about our society.
It's 60% of 30-year-olds 40 years ago used to have a kid. Now it's 27%.
So when I was on the plane on the way here, I told this woman who was sitting next to me what I was going to be talking about. And her gut reaction was, oh, why do we have to worry about that? Women are doing better than men. Like, great, let's do that for the first time in history. Like, her reaction was, why is this a problem? Then I started telling her these stats around lowest marriage rate, we're approaching the lowest marriage rate in U.S. history. The birth rate has gone down 20% in 20 years. And she didn't know these numbers. And I feel like people are afraid to talk about this topic because they think it's a zero-sum game where when men lose, women win, and vice versa. Yeah. But now we're all losing.
So one thing you see here is that there doesn't seem to be any questions about what a woman doing, right? I understand this is a discussion about men, but if you're going to say men and women need to work together, it's like men need to step up, men need to be more emotional, men need to be providers, protectors, procreators, and more emotional, and go to therapy and read fictional books. And what a woman expected to do, I don't know. There's no expectation on them. And this is the bias that you have to deal with, right? And what is this society, generally speaking, doing to make a man's life easier, to make it easier for you to be a provider or protector? The system is doing the opposite. It's making it way more difficult for you to be a provider or protector through inflation, lack of job stability, all the type of, not even building houses where you can raise families. They're building apartments where you can be single, alone, work, consume, and die, basically, right? That's what they want. They're building apartments, 1-2 bedroom apartments, where they're not really built for families to be raised in, right? And also, like I say, that's why as a man you need to look out for your own best interests. Women don't typically care for what are your best interests. You heard that in her case when she was getting the flight to this particular podcast. She was saying, woman was saying, well, men aren't doing as well as women, so who cares, right? That's why you should let women in society fall, right? Rug pull this society, look out for your best interests, let it collapse, and men need to look out for their best self-interest. The same way these women have no problem. Men are suffering, who cares? Can you not even get away with saying a woman is suffering, who cares, right? But I mean, it is, to Afghanistan. So men need to be better when it comes to being better providers for themselves, right? Don't worry about being better providers to stop the economic decline of a country. That's not your problem. The country's finances, the GDP of a country, the economic growth of a country isn't your fault, right? And again, this guy was pushing some talking point, I think, here around conscription. Again, establishment talking point. They want you to prove you're a real man by defending the country in a pointless war that they're going to try and restructure, in the Middle East, perhaps, right? So the conclusion comes to this, right? Men still feel obligations to be the provider. Women, not so much. They're not playing their traditional gender role. They can make money and demand to earn as much as a man, but then get upset that men aren't being the providers by earning more than women. So women want equal pay, but they also want to date men who are making more money than them. So it's completely retarded, this particular ideology that they're trying to promote through this supposed discussion to help men, right? Like I say, if a man's expected to be a provider and protector for a woman in a relationship, women aren't playing their gender role. And that's what I want you to remind me. What exactly value is that providing here, right? Because, people, oh, well, I would say, times you're in a relationship with a woman, she has a lot of demand for a man to do this and that, to provide for her, protect her, be emotional support for her, take her out places so she can be a consumer, and women make 80% of discretionary consumer spending decisions. So men are buying things on the basis of impressing women or keeping women happy. Now, it's like, what is a woman adding to your life? People might say companionship, but it's just like, well, you can live without that, right? Men aren't comfortable with solitude, being by themselves. Is not really desperate to be in a relationship, particularly in these type of one-sided dynamics. They're saying here that money doesn't make a man, but there's a phrase out there that money doesn't make a man, but money reveals who a man really is, right? And you can balance that effectively through whatever values you have. I would say that, you figure out what is in your best interest. And as I put on the caption here, money and freedom equals alpha male. Again, alpha male, over the top terminology these days, is kind of overused. But it comes down to that point, is that's what defines success now. It's not necessarily having a family. You're going to have a family if you want. You can have kids if you want, accept the risks that come with that through divorce, alimony, child support payments, things like that. But if you focus on your freedom and your money that can facilitate that, then you're much better positioned to make decisions. In the same way a woman can dispose of a man very quickly through a breakup, through a divorce, you can do the same. If you're got completely setting yourself up correctly as a single man financially, and your freedom is secured, however that would be, multiple citizenships in multiple countries, different income sources, whatever that would be, then if a woman's in your life and then she leaves because she has an emotional outburst and she doesn't like you or whatever, then it doesn't matter. She leaves, your life goes on, you'll find another woman. There's a line by Conway the Machine from Griselda, like a rap group you might be familiar with. And he says, cancel that woman and buy another one, right? And he says it and laughs. But his point is like, you be in a relationship with a woman when there's a popular phrase out there, it's not your woman, it's just your turn. So to what extent does money define a man's success? I think it does. To the extent it can maximize your freedom, not impress a woman, not desperately seek approval and validation for a woman and putting her up in an expensive hotel. Now, if you really want to help your financial situation, you need to take control of your career, securing a promotion faster, landing your dream career, and mastering office politics. I can do that through coaching and a course I sell. There's a link in description if you want to get started as quick as possible. The things are only going to get worse. It's going to have a more dysfunctional society, more dysfunctional social dynamics and financial dynamics. So the sooner you started in fixing your situation, many people in difficult situations right now. And we covered earlier briefly about the statistics of how unemployment really negatively impacts a man's mental health compared to a woman, because a man's identity is linked to his income, and that influences his self-worth. So if you're dealing with this unstable economy, reach out to me. Hopefully we can get you started with some coaching. Thanks for listening, and 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. Let me know what you think about this normie advice in the comments, and I'll see you next time.